Have Gun Will Travel, Season 6, Episode 11. The Long Way Home. Detailed Summary. The 11th episode of Have Gun Will Travel Season 6, The Long Way Home, is another story that combines the traditional Western atmosphere of the series with a thoughtful exploration of loyalty, responsibility, violence, and the meaning of home. Paladin once again finds himself involved in a dangerous situation that initially appears to be a straightforward assignment but gradually becomes much more personal. As the story unfolds, he must help a troubled individual return to a place from his past while dealing with people who have their own reasons for wanting the journey to end badly. The episode emphasizes that returning home is not always a simple physical journey. Sometimes it means confronting memories, mistakes, broken relationships, and consequences that a person has spent years trying to escape. The episode begins with Paladin in the familiar surroundings of the Hotel Carlton in San Francisco. His peaceful routine is interrupted when he receives information about a situation requiring his particular skills. Paladin is accustomed to receiving unusual assignments, and he quickly understands that this one involves escorting or protecting a person whose past has created serious problems. Rather than treating the job as an ordinary transportation assignment, Paladin asks questions and carefully studies the circumstances before agreeing to become involved. His instincts tell him that there is more to the situation than he has initially been told. The person at the center of the story is carrying a heavy emotional burden. Returning home should theoretically be a comforting experience, but in this case, the journey represents the possibility of confrontation. The individual has been away for a considerable amount of time, and the people waiting at the destination are not necessarily prepared to welcome him with open arms. Old conflicts remain unresolved, and the past has not disappeared simply because time has passed. Paladin understands this immediately. He has traveled across much of the American West and knows that physical distance does not necessarily separate people from their memories. A person can travel hundreds of miles and still remain trapped by something that happened years earlier. The idea becomes central to the episode because the journey home is really a journey into the past. As Paladin and his companion begin traveling, the relationship between them develops slowly. At first, the other man is suspicious of Paladin. He does not completely trust the professional gunfighter and seems uncomfortable with the idea of depending on someone else for protection. Paladin, however, does not force intimacy. He allows the man to reveal information naturally and watches his behavior carefully. The journey provides opportunities for the two men to talk about the past. Paladin gradually learns that the man left home because of a serious conflict. His departure may originally have been intended as an escape, but years away have not solved the underlying problem. Instead, the separation has allowed resentment and misunderstanding to grow. This is one of the episode's most important ideas. Avoiding a problem does not necessarily make the problem disappear. People often believe that time will heal every wound, but time can sometimes make emotional conflicts more complicated. Memories become distorted. People remember events differently. Small disagreements become larger stories. Anger becomes mixed with regret. Eventually, nobody remembers exactly how the conflict began, but everyone remembers feeling hurt. Paladin's role is therefore more complicated than that of a bodyguard. He becomes a mediator between the past and the present. As they continue their journey, signs of danger begin appearing. Paladin notices that someone may be following them. The possibility of an ambush changes the atmosphere immediately. The person traveling with him becomes increasingly nervous, while Paladin remains calm. His reaction demonstrates his experience. He knows that panic creates mistakes. A frightened person may reveal information, make unnecessary movements, or react before understanding the situation. Paladin instead studies the environment and waits. The open western landscape becomes a major element of the episode. Long stretches of road and isolated settlements create a sense of vulnerability. Travelers cannot easily disappear, and anyone following them has plenty of opportunities to observe their movements. Yet the same isolation also gives Paladin advantages because he can anticipate where an enemy might attempt to strike. As the journey continues, the emotional conflict becomes more important than the physical danger. Paladin discovers that his companion is afraid not simply because someone may want to kill him. but because he is terrified of facing the people he left behind. The possibility of returning home forces him to confront questions he has avoided for years. Has he changed? Have the people at home changed? Will they forgive him? Does he deserve forgiveness? These questions create much of the episode's emotional tension. Paladin does not give easy answers. He understands that forgiveness cannot be demanded. It has to be earned, and sometimes it may never come. However, he also believes that people deserve the opportunity to confront their past honestly. As they travel, the two men encounter several individuals who provide additional information about what happened years earlier. These encounters gradually reveal that the original conflict was more complicated than the protagonist remembers. Someone may have been blamed unfairly. Someone else may have hidden important information. A decision made in anger may have produced consequences nobody anticipated. The episode uses these revelations to challenge the idea that memory is always reliable. People often remember themselves as the victims of past events. They rarely remember the ways in which their own decisions contributed to the problem. Paladin remains skeptical of every version of the story. He listens to everyone. He compares their accounts. He looks for contradictions. His investigative method slowly reveals a more complicated truth. The supporting characters also help demonstrate how strongly communities preserve old reputations. When someone leaves town under controversial circumstances, the community may continue remembering that person according to the identity they had years earlier. Returning home, therefore, becomes extremely difficult. A person may have changed, but everyone else may still see the old version. This creates another important theme: whether people deserve a second chance. Paladin believes that people should be judged by what they do now rather than solely by what they did in the past. However, he also refuses to ignore consequences. This balanced perspective distinguishes him from characters who either demand absolute forgiveness or absolute punishment. As the journey progresses, the danger becomes more immediate. The people who want to stop Paladin and his companion make their intentions increasingly clear. Paladin realizes that the threat is connected directly to the old conflict. The past is literally following them. This creates a powerful symbolic element. The physical pursuit represents the emotional pursuit that has been taking place for years. No matter how far the man traveled, he could never completely escape what happened. Paladin's presence changes the situation because he refuses to allow fear to dictate the journey. He knows that running forever is not a solution. Eventually, the truth must be confronted. The story reaches a critical point when the travelers finally approach the community where the man once lived. Instead of feeling relieved, he becomes more anxious. Home is no longer the safe place he remembers. It has become a symbol of everything unresolved. Paladin encourages him to face the situation honestly. He does not promise that the reunion will be pleasant. He simply argues that continuing to run will guarantee that the conflict remains unresolved. This is one of the most important lessons of the episode. Courage is not always standing in front of a gun. Sometimes courage means walking through a familiar doorway and accepting whatever consequences are waiting on the other side. When the confrontation finally occurs, long-hidden emotions emerge. Anger, grief, disappointment, and regret all come to the surface. Characters who have spent years avoiding one another finally speak honestly. The truth about the original conflict becomes clearer, and several assumptions are challenged. The situation demonstrates that people often hold on to anger because they never receive an explanation. Once communication becomes possible, some of that anger begins to weaken. However, the episode does not pretend that words can instantly repair years of damage. Some wounds remain. Some relationships cannot return to exactly what they were. But understanding becomes possible. That distinction is important. Forgiveness does not necessarily mean forgetting. It means choosing not to remain permanently controlled by anger. Paladin's involvement is crucial because he creates an environment where the characters can confront each other without immediately resorting to violence. He remains prepared to defend himself and others, but he refuses to let the gun become the only language available. The final confrontation, therefore, becomes more emotional than physical. The people involved must decide whether they will continue repeating the past or finally move beyond it. The episode's title becomes especially meaningful by this point. The Long Way Home refers not only to the distance traveled, but also to the emotional journey required to return to one's former life. The road may be measured in miles, but the real journey is measured in years. The protagonist has spent a long time believing that leaving home would solve his problems. Instead, he discovers that home is not simply a place. It is also a collection of memories, relationships, and unresolved emotions. Returning home means accepting responsibility for all of them. Paladin eventually succeeds in helping the situation reach a peaceful resolution. He does not magically erase the past, but he helps the characters understand it more honestly. His work demonstrates once again that his greatest strength is not his gun. It is his ability to understand people. After the immediate danger passes, Paladin prepares to continue his journey. He remains the outsider. He does not become part of the family or community. He simply arrives, helps people confront a difficult situation, and moves on. This recurring pattern is central to his character. Paladin belongs everywhere and nowhere at the same time. He is constantly traveling, yet he frequently helps other people rediscover what home means to them. The episode closes on a reflective note. The journey may have been long and painful, but it has created an opportunity for healing. The characters have confronted truths that have been buried for years. They may never completely erase the past, but they no longer have to be controlled by it. Ultimately, The Long Way Home is a story about returning, confronting, and accepting. It reminds viewers that physical distance cannot always free people from emotional responsibility. Running away can provide temporary relief, but eventually the past demands attention. Through Paladin's calm guidance, the episode argues that real courage means facing difficult truths rather than avoiding them. The Western landscape provides the setting, but the story's message is universal. Everyone carries memories. Everyone makes mistakes. Everyone eventually reaches moments when they must decide whether to remain trapped by the past or move forward. For Paladin, the answer is clear. The past should be understood, but the future must still be lived. And sometimes, the longest road home is the one that leads a person back to the truth about themselves.